out rest of the
out of anger. Probably because I have this giant. All right, thanks everyone. So we're just working through, we have our interpreter Naomi here on the call. So we're just trying to get her spotlighted. So we are good to go. Before I start, if I could just get a thumbs up for those that I could see on camera. Can you all see my screen and see my PowerPoint here? Awesome. All right. Technology is working for me today. I love it. So are you co-host?
Yes.
I can only spotlight one person.
Okay, sorry, we're just trying to get Naomi spotlighted here in the Zoom. So as we're working through that, appreciate your patience, but we're going to go ahead and get started because we are a couple minutes over time and we want to start. Okay, all right, we'll wait.
It's okay.
Okay, I think they're both spotlighted. It had me doing them first.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're good.
Thank
All right. Naomi, we're good? Okay, so, and if we could get, can someone hit record for me? Did we already hit record?
Yep, it's already recording.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, everyone. So our agenda today is really around, we're going to continue our conversation around students. We're going to dive into our seminar and just really the fundamentals around that. What does that look like? And some basics to setting that up. And then we're going to dig into our technical support and research computing. And David Glass, our managing director, is really going to lead us through that conversation. So this one may be a little more heavy on the pushing of information to you. We got a lot of stuff we want to cover, but I promise you we will incorporate some pauses along the way for you to ask questions. Please put your questions there in the chat so we can ask them along the way as well, but you are more than welcome to come off mute when we take those breaks, because we want to make sure that the information that we're sharing with you works, and if there's any holes that we need to fill from an info perspective, we could fill that for you. Another piece that was really great feedback that I received from some of my peers on the team was it would be great if you can all rename yourself in the Zoom. I know that I have made connections with all of you via email or calls that we've had, but a lot of the folks on our call have not, from the DataMine team, I should say. So it would be really great for us to know and for them to know and understand with what university you're from. So if you can rename yourself in Zoom, that would be great. And if you could just put your university dash and then your name, that will allow for our folks to know where you're all located. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to our first topic, which is really continuing that conversation that Rebecca started on our last workshop 2 weeks ago, which was around students. So Rebecca, I know you're there. If you could come off mute and just kind of finish taking us through this topic.
Sure. Hi. And I know we have Kim Reckheimer on the phone too. So Kim, if you want to chime in, you feel free to chime in and add, change or delete anything I'm saying. But yeah, so we do a lot with the students with regards to the ways that we recruit students, the differences between recruiting new incoming students that are coming from high school and then students that are returning Purdue students and how we source them. So I'll just kind of start there. For the new incoming students, we do a variety of things for those students. The majority of it comes from we have a table we set up at the Purdue Information Fair, where it's like the big ballroom and all the different clubs and groups on campus are in there, and we have a table, and we proactively, we do obviously talk to the people that come up to our table and want to know more about the data mine, but there's a lot of people in there that they don't know what they need to know, and they just, the parents and the kids, they're in there looking like kind of like a deer in the headlights, like they don't really know what they should be looking for. And so we proactively will go and be like, hey, can we talk to you about the data mine? and talk to a lot of people that hadn't maybe necessarily were going to come to our table. So that's one way we do it. We are also affiliated with the Living Learning community here, the overall group here at Purdue. And so we are part of their recruiting process as well. We set up our table next to them and in the information fair. And then they also have breakout sessions, and we go to breakout sessions that various colleges have. So one of the ones we go to every single time, we go and talk for the first 5 minutes at the information session for the College of Science. And there's usually a couple of hundred people in the room, and we'll get up there and just kind of give our little spiel and then make our exit. And this year we'll be having student ambassadors come with us, which is great because, you know, the high school students want to also hear from, they don't just want to hear from, you know, me or Kim, they want to hear from people that have, students that have been in their shoes. So we're going to bring students with us this year, which would be really neat. And then for returning students, we do a variety of things. We send out emails. Some of them are targeted based on the types of projects that we have, as well as the types of students that we have, like in terms of majors. So if we have a corporate partner that's an agricultural type of project or company, we might do some targeted recruiting from students in the ag and ag related majors. Another thing we do is we just like to get out in front of the classes, and it doesn't necessarily have to be classes from data science or computer science or stats or actuarial science. I mean, we go to sociology classes, psychology classes, pretty much the whole gamut. And a lot of it's, I don't want to say cold calling because I don't have a phone, but cold emailing, I guess. And we'll just reach out. People are super friendly and they want to, you know, they want to help the students. And so they'll usually let us come in. We'll say, hey, it's just for 2 or 3 minutes. Can we just, you know, hijack the first, you know, 2 or 3 minutes of your class? And almost always they're like, sure. And so we keep the track of this on a big spreadsheet and who we've gone and see so that we can continue to be organized and we're not reaching out to people multiple times and, you know, coming off as disorganized because, you know, the staff population here is quite large. And then we have various, you know, events on campus, and it's kind of, we're coming at it from a lot of different angles to recruit these students. There's also the graduate students, and a lot of that comes from word of mouth. All of it's word of mouth too, but we send out a lot of very specific targeted emails to graduate students. So I'm gonna move on from there and talk a little bit about registration. So with regards to the course catalog, this past fall was our first semester where we had our own course prefix, and it was really wonderful to have that because, like, prior to this, we were under the stat prefix because that's Dr. Ward's home department, right? And so it was a great starter for the program, but we were using the temporary course codes, and that may be something you guys want to think about rather than creating course codes from scratch, if that is a barrier to entry for you, and using temporary codes for an existing department of one of the faculty members that'll be involved. And then once we got more established, we went through the formal process and having the vice provost sign off on, okay, here are the courses that we're going to have for seminar versus for corporate partners versus for our temporary codes. And then we have different codes for fall and spring, and we do that for a couple of reasons. The curriculum is different between fall and spring, but also it allows us to really easily track when there are some students that they don't participate for the full 9 months, even though we would obviously love everyone to. So it helps us to more easily track you know, trends and things like that. So we set up our courses, TDM, it's super easy, and it allows us to just, you know, report, do statistics, and keep track of our students and some monitoring a little bit more efficiently. As far as like our process, Purdue has an established process for setting up new courses, and it's through our Curriculog system. That's a software that Purdue uses, but it's pretty straightforward. And if there's any of you in particular have issues that you'd like to work out, we can talk about them here, and please feel free to interrupt me. Like, I'm just talking, but please feel free to interrupt me and we can talk through the stuff. I'm also happy to take it offline. If you have very specific individual needs, I can talk you through the particular components of data that we needed to come up with to input into the Curriculog system in order to get this into our workflow to be approved as official courses. So I'm going to pause. Is there anybody that wants to ask any questions, or you want to dive into your registration or recruiting before I move on? And please don't hesitate.
Hi, this is Matthew Cloud from Holy Cross.
Hi.
So I manage a consortium across 3 states. Keon Jiang, I see, is here too. He worked with us in that from Purdue Northwest. And so I'm actually managing that through a partnership with Ivy Tech. The getting that to work across different colleges in different states is interesting. So the general idea, I heard you talk about many different setups and understand how that has to work as you're getting it working on the fly. But are we going to go over how does that work for us to use your resources, whether it's within your LMS or within our own, or is it one way or the other? What's kind of the general idea there?
Yes, sort of. So one of the things we definitely need to do, so the intent is to address all of your questions and get you guys to a place where you feel comfortable moving forward and creating a path. And so you're obviously going to have individual questions that we want to make sure we're addressing. And so specifically, I think it depends on how we approach the students at your organization and like whether like how you want to work it, right? There's a bunch of different options. And so what I would probably prefer to do is for us to come if it's possible. Jessica, I don't want to usurp your plans for the future workshops, but I think what might be the most effective is to have a list of your concerns and the things that like I don't know if concerns is the right words, but the things that you're sensitive to that we need to be addressing. And we can go back and make sure we do some research. And then on the next workshop, we can together during the workshop, we can address and lay out kind of the answers and proposed maybe plan for your scenario. If that would that work? Or is that?
Well, I guess the easiest way, is it easier for us to use your LMS system? It is your system support. I mean, like right now, I'm dealing with issues with people who teach for us from other institutions where HR just randomly disconnects their ability to use their login, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if you face the same kind of issues, or is it easier for us to use the content where we're at, but there's still the lab resources
Okay.
are usually generally easier to access one way or another. But is there a best way to do that? I guess.
Yeah. So, okay. So I think I originally misunderstood your question, and I think I understand what you're asking now. So for our students, we use Gradescope. Now we also use Brightspace on the back end, and that ties into our, our database on the Purdue side. But, we have a bunch of students on our national data mine network, and we put them into Gradescope, and that allows them to get to all of our content. And so that's something that I'm not sure what conversation.
So it doesn't necessarily require them to have a Purdue email to get in and use the resources then?
No, it doesn't.
does
Like
not.
Gradescope, okay, so from a can it do it? Yes. Gradescope is our source of like where the projects, where the students would go in and like submit their work and take the quizzes and things like that. And then our graders would go in and grade that work. So like for the first year, however, we decide to structure how like you're going to set up, that's certainly an option.
Okay.
But what you need to figure out on your end is the actual credit component. That's the course catalog piece. That is the Gradescope stuff, in my opinion, is easy. That's easy. The course catalog is tricky because there's usually a cumbersome process with a lot of these schools that is just ingrained in like, okay, well, we got to go through this process, and there's a whole bunch of approvals. And so that's the hard part, right? Is figuring out what information you need from that. The Gradescope is easy.
Yeah, that was part of my reasoning of moving over to a private college. Yes. But I still work with state colleges, so I fully understand you. Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
And sorry, I just want to interject real quick. So Matt, I know, so good to have you on the call, and I know we're meeting tomorrow as well, you and I. One of the things, and I think this will help kind of frame up how we're going about with these workshops. The intention is to give that really high level. These are the things to think through as we would want to build out any sort of data mine program there at your college, at your university. Of course, we see this in various phases in working with our team. So the intention is like, okay, it's not you go through this and hey, you need to go and do it all on your own. And we're really, the idea is to kind of fold in and partner with one another. So yes, maybe the first year would be incorporating, if we got a cohort of students there at Holy Cross, incorporating them into our grade scope. And then, you know, the grading would be handled by our team and we would work through that through our TAs. But then the next year it would be transitioning it off and utilizing your own system. So just thinking through those steps.
Right. Like at Holy Cross, I have like maybe 50 students. I don't know that you're not even talking about that many from a college at this point, right? But I have potentially 50 students here that could do that. Whereas on my national program, I have about 1,400 currently, and I have a full-time person just for registering them into the system. So.
Awesome.
Okay.
Cool. Did between Jessica and myself, or is that?
Well, it sounds like they don't necessarily have to go through like a separate application process with Purdue to get into the system, that they could exist within their current college, and we can use those email addresses within this system. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
It would be our team, you know, and putting in the information from your students into our grade scope system. Yeah.
Good. If anybody can link the data, it would be y'all, right?
Yeah, we got you covered there. We got you covered there. I do want to make sure everybody, you know, everybody on the call, as you go through your own course catalog, though, if you run into any issues at all, I spent a lot of, on the Purdue side, I spent a lot of hours on this. So if you have any issues at all, as you get further down the road and want to create your own courses, even if it's a year or two down the road, like, you just, please let me know. Don't spin your wheels. We can help you with that process. Okay, so I'm probably running way longer than you expected, Jessica. So did you want to pivot to other stuff you have on the agenda, and then you can just continue to sprinkle me in, or do you want me to keep going through?
I think if maybe you could touch on the application process, just high level, just to give an idea of what we've done here at Purdue to get the wheels turning for us, some of our folks here on the call, and thinking through from like an application perspective. That would be great.
Sure.
And then we can move on.
Absolutely. And we can send out some of these links to you all as well, so you can see for yourself. We actually have 2 different links for applications. We used to have 3. We used to have one for new incoming students, one for returning Purdue undergraduate students, and then one for graduate students. We have since combined the returning undergraduate students with the graduate students, and then we've basically put in a workflow to address that, so that it all comes out in one nice spreadsheet, and that has made our lives a little bit easier. But we do continue to have a different application process for new incoming students, because the new freshmen coming in, they get funneled in through our Learning Communities office. So they'll go through the Learning Communities webpage, and there's a link that says apply now. And when they go and apply, they can apply for a learning community, and then the data mine is part of that. And when they click data mine, then they've got a whole bunch of data mine specific questions that they'll fill out. And there's a whole workflow on the back end that the Learning Communities set up based on guidance that our team has provided them for, like, information that we need to know. And then for returning students, and we can send you the link so that you can actually see what the applications look like. We use Qualtrics for the time being, and we send these applications out to everyone that'll take one. And that includes, I mean, we have printed out several hundred physical QR codes that link to our application. And we go out to classes and hand anybody that'll take one, we hand out our data mine QR code. And so we do try to tackle it from all angles, but it links to a Qualtrics form. I'll send it to you, super easy. And there's some workflows on the back end that attempt to gauge a student's technical you know, what their technical skill set is so far, along with some soft questions about what their interests are. But that's it's pretty simple. And we ask them what cohort they want to do, whether it's, we call them cohorts, you know, it's within the Datamind, the kind of the sub-learning communities, I guess. We've got the general, which is just seminar. We've got corporate partners, which is by far our most popular. I think 2/3 of our students do corporate partners, just because it's such a valuable experience for them. And you know, Maggie and her team run it so well. They're like a well-oiled machine. So word of mouth has gotten around, and corporate partners is like growing. So this will be the first year that we're going to probably put some parameters as to how many students we can even take. So that being said, that we also have other cohorts like data visualization. I know I can see you guys' face in the background. I'm talking too much. I'm going to stop talking soon. Stop laughing at me. Yeah, so we have a bunch of other cohorts: actuarial science, data visualization, physics, so on and so forth. We'll send you all the links, and then you know, whatever we don't cover, whatever Jessica doesn't let me talk next time, we can communicate through email or phone call too.
You know, you give Rebecca any opportunity with the microphone, and she could run the whole call. No, I appreciate you, Rebecca, and thank you so much. I know it was a lot of information, and any of the links or resources that Rebecca or David both talk about, I'll make sure to share all of that with you. Of course, the recording of the call and the PowerPoint will be posted for you all to see after the call. So thank you. Yes, your TED Talk. All right, so let's go ahead and move forward. I'd love to talk about seminar, because I know this is a piece that many are very interested in, how we bring that to life and make that happen. And so what I thought first would be great is that we would have Dr. Ward speak through just really kind of that 30,000 viewpoint of seminar, and how that kind of got started, that history behind that. And then we'll transition to David, and David will really talk around from like that data science technical building of project support aspect, and how that looks. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn my camera for Dr. Ward. He's sitting right next to me.
Thanks
So
for
there you
letting
go.
me lurk on your camera
You're
here.
fine.
So we used to have about 20 sophomore undergraduates every year, and we ran a model like that for 5 years, actually. Tell people that so that they know they don't have to take on, like Matthew was saying, you know, 1,000 some students at their institution or across several institutions. It can be good to start small. We nowadays will fill a whole dining court with students, as you see in the picture. Students don't have to come to the seminar because there's no lecture. It's more like a big open office hour where I'm there and the TAs are there. It's a 50-minute session, one time a week. We run that session several times on a Monday morning, and then on Monday afternoon, we run it virtually online. So both modalities are there for students. There's a fair amount of asynchronous learning because the students can start the project before the seminar, work on it after the seminar, get help in our Piazza infrastructure. In the fall, we tend to cover R the first semester and Python the second semester in the spring. And it's that common denominator of material that everybody in Datamind takes. Everyone takes their seminar, regardless of whether they're working with a research professor or in our corporate partners program. So yeah, you're seeing an actual picture of the seminar there on the screenshot. So
So before we move on to David to really talk through around building the projects and supporting that, I'd love to open up for any of you that have questions for Dr. Ward, just really around seminar and getting that set up.
Not everybody all at once.
Is there a regular time that meets, or do we set that up, or how is that?
Yeah, so if we would get students involved into our Datamind program, so I guess it could go both ways. So if you wanted to set that up within your university, it would be where the timing that would work best for you. For students that through the Indiana Datamind Network, because it's asynchronous, there is not necessarily, they don't join in on this call in a virtual type setting. We do offer a virtual seminar that Dr. Ward does support every Monday in the afternoon, but that is for all levels, and it's for anyone who could not make the in-person. It's anyone that are participating in the data mine from other universities. They could jump on as well, and then they would have the resource with Dr. Ward and asking any questions and whatnot. But that is how it's currently set up. Now, if it was something that you know, down the road, you set up your own data mine program there at your school, it would certainly be however you would want to set that up for whatever meets the needs for your students and your university. So following this model, or you know, doing it all online, or whatever, how it would work.
No, I found that I have some NSF research on studying about 10,000 students in the state per year. And that 1 hour a week is really all they typically need, even if it's a 6 credit hour course. So it's really more after that hour focus that having the setup so that they can collaborate. Does this system allow them to easily collaborate with each other?
I think so. I mean, there's on the order of 1,000 some pages of material up on the web. There's many hundreds of videos up on the web. It is conducive to self-study. And then when you're thinking about the potential to collaborate, we allow students, of course, we encourage them to work together on their projects. And I mentioned in passing, we have an environment called Piazza where students can post questions that they're not only the TAs and the faculty and staff can see, but their peers can see too. It's really collaborative. Yeah. It's meant to emulate the way we learn in the real world, you know, that there's projects to accomplish and material to be supported, and then ultimately you do the work. So what you said really resonates with me.
And even if they're not selected for the program, is this something that you're okay with us using in a more open source way?
Anyone can use any of our materials. Everything's posted publicly. You know, there are likely people using our materials we're not aware of, and that's 100% okay.
All right, it's easy to access, but unlike our psychology faculty would love to have R for their students. It's easy to access, and I've reviewed it. It's quite good. So
that's a nice segue, I think, into what David's going to say, because we also don't want, say, colleagues from psychology to have to reinvent the wheel. We have the shared environment that we work in. And I don't know if you want to maybe comment just a little bit on you know, on our computation infrastructure and so on, you know. So
yeah, sure. So we'll get to that in another couple of slides specifically about what infrastructure we use. But yeah, you stole my thunder a little bit with the lines about open source, because everything that we put out on the examples book is definitely open source, and we encourage other people to use that in whatever way fits for them. We've even gone beyond that, where most of our GitHub repository, everything except for the project answers, for obvious reasons, are open to the public. So you can actually go in and see the containers we use, you can see the code bases we use, and you can use those as they're helpful for you as well. So yeah, we're trying to make everything open source that we can as we're developing content.
thank you.
All right, so I think my sections, you'll see I'll dive a little bit more into Seminar. I'll talk some about our computing resources, and also some about how we support the different corporate partner student teams from a data science perspective. So this is all pretty high level. Like anyone on our team, I'm more than happy to have more in-depth discussions. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out or put them in chat, or I'll try and incorporate pauses as well. But just building on the seminar content. So this, what we look at is trying to build content that we think would be really valuable to students as they're learning R and Python from both a coding perspective and a data science perspective. Because there's, you know, there's lots of different areas you can use coding for, but there's also a lot of applications that kind of blur the line between the two. And you'll see too that I try, similar to what Rebecca and Maggie did, to ask some semi-rhetorical questions about what we've learned at this point, what would be helpful for you to think about. And some of these are things that we're still working through. So complete transparency, some of those we don't have a great answer to yet. But so the projects themselves, as Dr. Ward said, are built in Python and R. They start out really simple with, the core building blocks of how you write lines of code, what packages are, what libraries are, how you import them, just starting from zero, basically, from a coding perspective. And then they continue to build in complexity. So we have the 100 through 500 level courses. Students, if they're engaged, start out in 100 level. And then if they come back, they'll move through those courses. If they feel like they have a really good background, we do occasionally allow them to, somewhat informally test out of 100 level and go into 200 level. So it builds out from how you start with coding, how you even write your first Hello World program, all the way through to topics like parallelization, or how to do natural language processing, how to do imagery analysis. So there's a pretty big range of complexity through all those types of things. And we'll talk a little bit too around what I view as one of our biggest contributions from teaching data science and teaching these technical skills. But yeah, there's quite a bit of range of topics that we provide. And so you'll see kind of the questions toward the bottom of this slide. A couple things that we've learned over the years: project specialists take a depth of background that can be hard to find, and also quite a bit of time. So for a long time, we had one person who was working on all this development. He still does a large amount of it. And we've had other team members who have joined to kind of help develop these projects. So when you're thinking through this, it's really important to highlight the kind of skills that you want to teach, and then think through what that effort looks like to develop those kinds of projects, because it could also depend on the department that you're collaborating with, where you see this fitting within your university. But there's a surprising amount of effort to get these things written. And I mean, most people here have developed curriculum, so it may not be as surprising, but there is a lot of work that goes into those projects. The other thing that I really wanted to emphasize on this slide is the idea of accessibility. Our team is learning a ton about this. This is one that we do not have an awesome answer to yet, but we're working on a lot. But just the idea of captions for pictures or alternative text on images, making sure that you have closed captioning that's accurate. There's a lot of things that we've learned about that can really help these resources be accessible to anyone.
So before we go into the next slide, I just want to chime in again. What Dr. Ward was saying is that we've had someone build this out for quite some time. And again, part of our efforts in sharing the model that we do here and through our grant is really sharing all of those resources to you. So it is out there, it is public. It's I will certainly, if I haven't shared it with you already, which I think I have, but if you haven't seen it, I will certainly include that link as well. But there are resources for you to utilize. So it's bringing it to your university as well. So
along those lines, I know you mentioned about GitHub, and I know I've saw that maybe sometime in the last month or something like that. Is that have like an easy way to import from Brightspace to Moodle or Canvas or something like that, the structure of it?
That's interesting. So we don't do as much where we import directly from our GitHub into Brightspace or any of the other tools. I would have to research that one further. We use that a lot on like the high performance computing systems that we use in the different environments that the students work with, but I don't know that we've ever had to interface between the two on our side.
Okay, thank you.
I could follow David's comment by saying my sense is it's a little bit LMS agnostic, because even though, as an example, Purdue has adopted Brightspace, we don't put any of our stuff in Brightspace. You know what I mean? So it's not like we're closely tied with Moodle or Brightspace or any of the LMSs. So
well, like I have a Python course that I teach that's a 3-credit hour, but I have it in Canvas and in Moodle format so that when instructors use it, they can pull it in and then modify it for their needs, right, very easily. So that's kind of my thought. Is it in any sort of format that's easy to do that with?
Jay, yeah, go ahead, Jay.
So I'm thinking about the seminar, and just for context, we've been experiencing the seminar for about 1.25 semesters. And I'm thinking about how this might look on different campuses. In my experience, there's no way that I would want to, I mean, they're so awesome, I wouldn't want to remake it, right? However, one thing that I can anticipate is, so in the projects, the students work with data, and the data are sometimes very large, and it's there, and the access to the data to do the project is through the Purdue Anvil setup, right? So
Yep.
if a different university were going to do that, they would need access to, and is that data, you said, is it on GitHub or is it only on the Purdue, or what's the story with that?
No, so I love forums like this because we use this kind of feedback to improve ourselves. And we've known for a little bit now that we need to find a way to make our data more open source, because these are public data sources, what we use for seminars. So we wouldn't have any legal concerns making them open source. But you're right that it's difficult from a storage and accessibility mindset. So it's something that's high on the data science team's to-do list, but we haven't gotten there quite yet. It's a big piece for us.
Yeah, I get it. I have like brain imaging data I've been working on for like, well, now almost 15 years. But it's about 1 gigabyte per second of data and 5 minutes of patient data. That's a lot, right? So yeah.
Even just our static data that's not streaming,
Mm.
you know, we could have a model where each student is pulling it down off the web, right? But then
Mhm.
we're gonna overwhelm the network and,
Mm.
you know, IO is so slow
Okay.
Yep.
anyway.
Yeah, but this is great because that's, if you haven't already, when you look at the examples book, a lot of that is built out based on mentor and partner feedback. So even hearing about, making these things easy to incorporate in different LMS systems is something that we can look at for a potential future improvement.
Yeah, I've been working with AWS and Oracle. Oracle's it's been pretty straightforward. The cost that we're still working on. AWS has not been consistent as to whether we actually have access to the right buckets or not. We can get it there, but it's been more security stuff. So I'm just curious how you're going about that.
Yeah, I usually try and avoid AWS security at all costs, but we don't do too much on AWS right now. So most of it is things that we're either hosting on Purdue's HPC or we have a little bit in AWS, but it's really just to host our examples book website.
And so does it allow, when the students are is it more like a read-only data set, or are they able to manipulate it, or?
Yeah, so most of the data sets that we have in that data store are set to read only, and then students would be encouraged to do the analysis and then save off a byproduct if they needed something that they could edit themselves.
Okay,
They
so
have a
still,
large-
so to do more descriptive analysis of it, they would need to have functionality on their endpoint computer to make that work. Is that what you're saying?
No, so the way we run this is actually in the next couple of slides, they log into a website that serves as a front end for the high performance computing clusters that we use. So they can run that from any computer. It's desktop or laptop agnostic, but if they were using it on their own and they wanted to use one of our open source data sets, they would need some sort of compute. Yeah,
Okay.
and we don't have a good answer to the data set availability right now.
So the open source data set doesn't have an option on the HPC storage. Is that what you're saying?
No, I think I might be a little bit confusing. Let me
Okay.
get through the slides on the Anvil system that we use, and that might help clarify a little bit.
Great, thanks.
Yep. And this one, I can go really quickly on this slide. This is actually I had faculty here at Purdue one time ask me how we ensure that we're teaching data science the right way. And one of the interesting things that I thought that was really impactful for students was building up the confidence to do kind of the scientific method on their own. So this idea of doing some research, getting some guidance from people who know a lot about the area, but then trying to implement it, breaking stuff, whether intentionally or not, and then iterating on that and improving it. And to me, that's one of the biggest things that students learn and bring out of their data mine, especially the corporate partners projects, is the confidence to go say, okay, I don't really know what, random forest is, but I can go research what random forest is, figure out what the model assumptions are, what I need to be aware of, try it, and then see what happens. And I think that's the reason I try and include this slide, is because for me, that's one of the big kind of intangibles that students learn throughout this process. This one is another one. You'll see a lot of common themes around the different types of content. So this is very similar to what I talked about in seminar, in that when we're designing data science content, we have to think through how do we make it available to people at different skill levels in their data science journey? How do we make it available to people who might be visual learners or may want to dive in and kind of do some reading themselves? Like we were just having a great discussion about how do we make technical resources available to these students, whether it's on their own computers or in our case, most of the time on Purdue's resources. Some of the questions you'll see down below that we ask ourselves a lot is how do we design something that benefits the students that isn't already out there. Because I think, as everyone on this call knows, there's kind of a glut of data science content of varying qualities, especially over the last 10 years. And so for my team, we really focus on code-based examples, things that students can get down in and tinker with and kind of break and learn about different concepts piece by piece. That's not wholly unique, but we think that there's enough of a need for us to develop kind of our own versions of those examples. But these three are questions that I still continually ask myself, and I'm continually working to improve on. So this is just kind of an informational slide. As I mentioned, we're the first to admit that we are not experts at everything we teach. So especially as you're looking at if you wanted to move these into your own organizations or universities, unless you get really lucky, and let me know where you found them if you find any of these people, but usually you're not going to have anyone who is an expert in every single type of data science or data engineering that you need to implement. So we try and kind of educate and support by committee. We recognize that each one of us have different areas of specialty, areas that we're interested in. We also work at a lot of world-class universities, so it's great to be able to leverage faculty knowledge or people at other universities like yourselves who are experts in various fields. So we really try and connect students with the right resources to help them learn more about the areas that they're interested in. And just to give you a general idea, we have a little bit of everything here. So you'll see this if you get a chance to come to the symposium or look online, but there's everything from time series analysis to imagery analysis to deep learning, neural networks, people building web applications, data infrastructure design. It's really fun because there's kind of one of every project almost. So this is just kind of some reflection questions that I was thinking about from a data science perspective. We actually were just talking to a different group who's designing curriculum where they want it to be kind of the really advanced side of things. They were making an informed choice to say we want it to be the really complicated side of data science, which definitely has benefits and drawbacks as well as the way that we're doing it. Ours is kind of the data science for everyone message. So that's where we live with a lot of the different components that we put on. But these are just two questions that I ask myself around what would be most beneficial to your university, your department, your area of research, the people you're partnering with, and then how do we build those core skills? I will say, as Dr. Ward mentioned, lab is really, really beneficial. Having students have that ability to kind of get together, collaborate, have some heads down time, research. That is something that I think is really instrumental to helping students actually build the skills that we want them to develop. So this is the resource that we were talking about. This is the examples book. If we haven't sent you the link for this, we definitely will. All of our projects are hosted out there, all of our data science and data engineering content, all of the awesome corporate partner stuff that Maggie's team has put together. This is also where we try and incorporate a lot of our feedback. So one thing that we're learning is a lot of partners want students to use dashboarding tools like Tableau or Power BI, but those come with associated licensing costs. And even though we are a Microsoft university, we don't necessarily have licenses to give each student Power BI. So there's things that even I'm learning now about writing documentation to help future partners think through things like licensing costs when they come to us. So all of that content will live here. So this and the GitHub repository are probably the two most interesting things from the public documentation that we have. Okay, so this is, hopefully I'll clarify a little bit. If I'm still confusing, let me know. But this is where we actually run the majority of the code for our student teams. I say majority because we do have one or two teams that actually prefer to run on the company's environment. So they may partner with a company and the company says, we'll just give you an ID, you'll log into our computing system and use our resources, which is totally fine. But everything that we use here is hosted on Anvil, which is Purdue's high performance computing cluster. It's actually built as a consortium. So I think there's 3 or so different HPCs. One is at Purdue, and there's 2 other universities that host 2 other HPCs as part of the NSF's initiative here. So it's really awesome because it's a world-class supercomputer that the students get to run everything on. And this is where we build most of our content. So when we think about these companies that we're partnering with, each company has a secured directory on Anvil. So it's secured to just the team that's using it and the corporate partners mentor and then the DataMine staff. That's where they'll upload the data that they're using for research. And then we have another environment called Open On Demand. That's just a website. So they'll just go to ondemand.anvil.rcac.purdue.edu and they'll be able to log in and ask for computing resources on Anvil. And then this is where they can run any of their code. So they can run seminar code here, they can run code related to research, they'll have access to all of those open source data sets that we said. They'll have access to anything that the company uploaded that the students want to work with. But that's how we try and make it computer agnostic. We provide an environment to the students where as long as they have a website, they can log in and use these resources. That being said, that does not address what we were talking about earlier with people who aren't in the data mine getting access to our open source data. That's something that we need to work on in the future, but they all use it through that website utilizing Anvil. And the footnote, we do support Windows only applications. So we do have a handful of Windows servers for things like Power BI or Tableau. I only mention that in this group because flexibility is really key. Technological flexibility is really key, but also very difficult and very time consuming. So one thing to take of note as you're building these programs yourself.
So let's take a quick moment and pause and see what questions you all have about any of the topics that David's talked through.
I know that was a lot of information too. So if there's anything I said that was confusing, let me know and I can try and clarify.
So I'm very curious, just let me jump in here quick. I'm very curious about the Tableau because we actually have Tableau licenses here, but I would love to use them, but I'm scared to death that there's going to be a problem with hooking it through Anvil or the non-disclosure stuff and, company data. That's a nightmare for me. And it might be, so if you have experience with this, I want to talk to you, maybe not now, but later or something about this.
Yeah, we can definitely take that offline. I will say in full disclosure that it's not entirely not a nightmare, the way we have to work with it now. We've been setting up the students on a Windows VM that then we have to connect to Anvil via SSH. So we can talk about that whole process, but it's something we're working through too. So definitely something we're going to improve in the future.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was gonna say we could probably have another hour or so just around that stuff because I manage a couple different private cloud systems, and there's the state here in Indiana want us to create an extension to that network that y'all have to the northern part of the state with what we're doing up here. We have a different setup, more focused on virtual machines and virtual networks, but similar capabilities to the HPC system. Not as many processors, but more RAM and other areas.
Yeah.
Related but different, right?
Absolutely. And if anyone ever wants to talk about this further, like I said, feel free to reach out. And I know I saw a question in the chat. So for students who are outside of Purdue, the nice thing with the Anvil system is that the whole Access portal, which is also named slightly annoyingly Access, is hosted by the NSF. So what it means is everyone has to go through this Access ID signup process. So if you have an institution like Purdue, there's actually a way they can choose Purdue and use their same Purdue credentials. But if there's an institution outside, they just have to sign up for an Access ID. It's a free account. And then we add that ID to our allocation. So anyone can sign up through that portal, and then we add them to our resources.
Yeah, so any schools that we would bring on that we would have you, support from a seminar perspective or whatnot, or on corporate partner projects, we would work with you to get those students access to Anvil through Access.
Yep.
But yeah, it's certainly something that we've been doing for all of our students, not only in the National Data Mine Network, but for like our students there, like at YSU and ASU and whatnot. So that's something we would do with you for those that are not in the data mine currently.
What kind of partnerships do you have outside of the technical resources for research? Like partnering with research focused faculty. So many like Holy Cross and my association at Ivy Tech, they're teaching focused colleges, but the NSF and others want to encourage more cross partnership between those types of institutions with research institutions right in this area, right? The area, topical area, right?
Yeah, and I would say, I mean, I'd be interested to hear Dr. Ward's viewpoint on this too, but I would say we have one that comes to mind that's really, really successful, where there is a professor who is really passionate in plant genetics and works closely with one of our corporate partners who works in that area. He is incredibly engaged. He meets with the students all the time. But I think that's mostly driven out of his passion and just enjoyment of engaging with the students. I do know that, again, our team was just talking today about kind of having a deliverable to continue to build faculty relationships within our own university. So I think we've had some success stories that have been amazing, but I think it's also an area that we're focused on building out in the future.
Another obvious piece of this too is, you know, faculty also only have 24 hours in the day, right? And the ability to leverage some of their curricular materials so they're not reinventing the wheel. We hope that's appealing not only to faculty, but to their leadership as well. We know that talking to some of the heads and deans that they have appreciated when faculty are able to leverage these resources and then spend a little bit less time in curricular content creation. So. Yeah, I have to be rude and run into another meeting.
You're
I'm
fine.
very
You're
sorry.
fine. We're wrapping up. You're good.
So good seeing all of our friends
Yes.
today.
And thank you, Shane, for
Yeah.
joining as well. All right.
Shane's one of our friends.
He is.
I'm
he
only
is.
kidding. Yeah, it's great seeing everybody today. I'm gonna just
Thank you, Dr.
just
Ward.
run away
Okay.
from it. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, I can see.
Yeah, you're fine. You're good.
But yeah, and I think we can finish up, or I can finish up on this last slide pretty quickly. So this one and the next one are just a recap, but this one is really encouraging you if you don't have a good relationship with your research computing team. So they may not be called research computing, they just happen to be at Purdue. But the team that enables your different cluster and high performance computing environments. I was very lucky that I inherited a really good relationship with ours, and they've been great to work with. But really without their resources, we wouldn't be able to run any of what we do from a data mining perspective. So this is just kind of a technical lessons learned. I won't make you listen to me read all these out. I think the biggest thing is technological flexibility. I think we heard some from people on the call already that you manage many different environments, and it's very hard to get them to talk to each other and to get them to be usable in the right ways. We've had a very similar experience. So I don't think it's a new lesson, but it's something that it's good that we can support many different types of technologies, but it also has a lot of overhead and challenge. I think the rest of this is mostly about the benefit of student collaboration and how we think about data science.
Awesome. Thank you so much, David. So we got about 4 minutes left. I want to be respectful of all of your time, but also I want to ensure that if there are any lingering questions, that would give you an opportunity to ask them to David or to Rebecca from a student recruiting perspective. We'll, of course, from a logistical piece, I will make sure that you get PowerPoint and the recording of this call and any additional links before the end of the week. So you'll get all of that from me.
So I have a question for David. Okay, Clean Jung from Purdue Northwest. So we've been using research computing of resources a lot of time, and especially the Scholar. We use Scholar actually for our data science courses as well. Also we subscribe. We had a subscription to Jailbreeze. I think it's called Jailbreeze, and that's another one for more for research, not for teaching. So our actually graduate student experienced some performance issues with Jailbreeze. I don't know, with this larger scale effort, how would the performance of the research computing resource be impact, if too many students try to get on, and especially toward the end of semester, everybody try to complete the projects on time. Do you have any idea?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I do know, like you said, Scholar, I think from research computing's guidance is primarily for education. So they don't view it as a very resource heavy cluster. Gilbreth, we use primarily for GPUs, and we'll probably expand more there in the future. Anvil has been really, knock on wood, but really good to us from a performance perspective. So we were on Brown, which is another cluster primary or previous to Anvil, and we had a lot of the same resource issues that you were experiencing, where if all the students logged on Friday afternoon, it would be unusable and would crash, or if everyone was using it. So far, we've kind of right-sized onto Anvil and actually had pretty good performance there. That said, Anvil's big enough that it gives us the ability to request a borderline ludicrous amount of compute. Like we just requested 3 million compute hours for next year. So we did upscale quite a bit between last year and this year.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Any other questions?
So do you have an idea? You talked about the number of hours, but Kian and I were in a meeting earlier this morning where we're discussing how to work past the issues of even Red Hat's and IBM's resources, where we have 200 students at a time using cloud OpenStack resources and it's breaking down. And so they've added some to their private cloud system there. We've maxed out what we can do at the Ivy Tech side. So we're, and that's a lot of, it sounds like a lot of compute hours, but what is that, in a given day, how many people could really get on there, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. So I need to be better on my side about tracking our daily usage because we don't have a daily user count. I estimate that most days concurrent users were probably somewhere around 100 at one time because students tend to log on in their labs, and then sometimes we have students who are using it off hours, but most of the usage is in their labs. I also think, like you said, use cases differ a lot. We have a lot of students that are doing data analysis, but they're not necessarily doing like neural network training or things that can take a long time and a lot of resources. So it's on my mind as something that I think will need to continue to evolve and improve in the future. But right now, yeah, I'd say probably around 100 concurrent users most times.
Okay, because we have some systems like Ivy Tech has one that can do 256 simultaneous, not the same kind of thing, right? It won't do AI to that extent, but fairly intensive cybersecurity virtual machines with a number of systems. But and I think, what is it there? You have up to 100 at Purdue Northwest. Kian, do you know what the limit there is on that new system?
It's at 256, I believe.
Okay, so y'all did 256 as well. Okay. And we just added one. Well, hopefully it comes in today for Holy Cross to start out with like 16, but I don't need 250 here, right? But as we grow this, I know you're trying to do 10,000 people over some period of years. That's the goal for another grant, right?
Yes,
10,000
yeah.
students.
That's our NSF Engines grant. Yes, that we.
So I know
yeah.
there's new grants coming out here in June to apply for to expand this. I would like to suggest we have a group discussion on how we might rally our resources together to meet those needs.
Yeah.
Yeah,
great.
and that's where, I mean, I'm sure everyone has connections at their various research teams too, but that's where I'd be happy to bring in some of the research computing team that I work with too, because I try and keep them pretty up so that we don't overwhelm them or break the system in new and unexpected ways, although we are good at that.
But these are good problems. That means we have more people coming into it, right?
True.
All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for your time. Our next session will be in 2 weeks, and Maggie Betts and her corporate partners team will be on the hook. So I know that there is going to be a lot of information shared because we're splitting up that topic over 2 different workshops. So it's certainly something that is exciting and really looking forward to sharing all of the details from a corporate partner perspective. So if you have any questions, please feel free to send me an email. You should all have my contact info because I'm always, emailing you all, but I will also be getting all this stuff out to you. So really appreciate your time today and thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.